Good evening. This is a board workshop meeting of the Board of Trustees and is being held Tuesday, June 14th, 2022. The meeting is to be called to order and the time is 5:30. Everyone please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you. You may be seated. Let's proceed with public comment. And we do have 3 speakers. The district is a local government body charged with serving the educational needs of all school children in our district. And board meetings must be focused on meetings in this charge. The district board meetings are public meetings under the Texas Open Meetings Act to be conducted in the business of the district. They are not, however, meetings of the public. Therefore, all persons in attendance are expected to display civility, decorum. Individuals shall refrain from using harmful and offensive content, i.e. libel, slander, defamation, obscenities, fighting words, for the respects of the rights and reputations of others. We greatly appreciate those individuals who have requested to speak to the board during open forum or public comment in regards to a specific agenda item. We are bound by certain time constraints in order to cover all items on the agenda and therefore must limit presentations to 5 minutes. Please respect the rights of others in your presentation. By law, the board cannot take action upon or discuss any item which is not posted on tonight's agenda. But we will give all presentations our serious considerations. Thank you. Let's proceed. And the first speaker that we have is Angelica Soto.
Good evening, Board President, Mr. Mena, Board of Trustees, and Superintendent Dr. Carmen. I rise today to speak to the agenda item about the salary proposal. As pointed out by Board Member Mr. Castellano, if the district raises only beginning hourly rates for entry-level positions, this will create even more salary compression for experienced employees within the salary scales. The district should strive to retain experienced, loyal employees because nothing can substitute for experience in optimizing performance, effectiveness, and safety. This can apply to any job category, but I believe it is most critical for the performance of teachers and bus drivers. The discrepancy is most notable for SISD bus drivers. For this reason, we strongly urge the school board trustees to consider a 20-cent increase per year of experience for bus drivers. This will allow the district to retain our experienced bus drivers and be competitive in this market. Also, in light of the fact that other districts are giving bonuses for signing up, we implore you to carefully consider recruiting, retaining the best employees with a substantial across-the-board, not the midpoint raise, that would allow employees to be able to continue supporting their families without having to take on extra jobs. The impact of higher prices is real, as you are very well aware, and relief from rising inflation is highly unlikely. I thank you for the opportunity to speak and for your deliberation of the best compensation package for all SISD employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Soto. Our next speaker is Tommy Hill. No, correction. Sorry, Tommy. It's Veronica Rees.
Good evening, President Mena, members of the board, and Dr. Carmen. My name is Veronica Ruiz. I serve as Vice President of the 2,000-member Socorro American Federation of Teachers. Please allow me to share some of the accolades earned by our district in recent years. A-rated district and TEA Post-Secondary Readiness Distinction District Award. 2021 Best Communities for Music Education Award, Fine Arts, 5 consecutive years. 2020 National Public Relations Association Golden Achievement Awards, 2020 American School Counselor of the Year finalist, and 2019 Texas School Counselor of the Year, Amanda Bustamante, Paso de Norte School, 2020 CAFR Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting District Award, 4 consecutive years, 2020 RYHT Raise Your Hand Texas Raising Blended Learners Grant Recipient District Award, 2020 through 2021 Lone Star Counselor Award, 9 counseling programs, HEB Excellence in Education Large District Winner and Finalist District Award, 3 years, 2020 Region 19 Elementary Teacher of the Year, and 2020 Texas Teacher of the Year finalist Perla Lozoya, Dr. Sue Shook, 2021 Region 19 Elementary Teacher of the Year, Pedro Grurola, Vista del Sol. America's softball team, for the first time in SISD history, made it to the Final Four, and the many other student honors in athletic and academic pursuits, which are too numerous to mention here. These are just some of the accolades and honors received by SISD over recent years. The district has been blessed with a growing tax base, a consistently increasing student population, great test scores, and holding back of charter schools, and a generous and stable fund balance which has fueled endless opportunities for our students. However, none of the above could have been accomplished by SISD without immense effort on the part of all of our fabulous employees. I repeat, all our employees. I applaud Mr. Morales' comment that we have to do better than El Paso. I agree. Did you know Clint is offering a $10,000 signing bonus to any new or veteran SPED teacher that goes to work for them? Some of our SPED folks are leaning that way, and we already have a shortage. I ask you, why do we simply need to do better than our neighbors? Because we have the motive, the means, and the opportunity. 1, the motive, offering the best financial package to recruit and retain the best employees. 2, the means, more money than ever with ESSER funds and increased property tax proceeds. And 3, the opportunity. Your final vote is next Tuesday. Socorro AFT remains committed to our request for a 10% pay raise, $15 minimum starting wage, and a $2,000 retention stipend for 2022-2023. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Reese. Our next speaker is Tommy Hill.
Okay. Can you guys hear me? Okay, what the lady was talking about last week, that is gonna really mess over our seniority people, the people that we have here. When El Paso went to $17 an hour, I showed some people, I came up with a formula that works. Now, she said that from $15.50 to $17 an hour for the bus driver. She said that was 10%. But that's not how we do things. We do things on midpoints. 8% of the $19 midpoint for bus drivers is $1.52. $1.52 times $15.50 is $17.02. If we took out that midpoint, you started the wage at $17.02, you would actually be ahead of EPISD, plus you should do the 20 cents per year. That would make the high point 25.02 and the midpoint 21.02. Now, that's just for bus drivers. But we need to not do compression. We need to look further than that. We need to do better. Now, I know that we might be in between 5 and 6%, but I'm hoping that we can at least do 6% on that next Tuesday, because our employees really do deserve it. And the minimum wage at least goes to $13 an hour. Please look at the compression. Please don't let them do this to us. if we have years of service at one rate, don't make it go lower. Because then what are we telling our employees? We're telling them if you stay here, you make less per year. We got a bad turnover in things, and we need to fix that. Let's start fixing the turnover in the district and keeping our people here. Let's do the right thing and not bow down to this compression. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. We will continue with item 4, budget workshop. A, presentation of the 2022-23 employee compensation plan. Presenter is Mr. Tony Reza.
Yes, President Mena, Dr. Carmen, members of the board. Tonight we conclude our series of workshops for the purpose of adopting the budget for the 22-23 fiscal year. We're also going to present to you our recommendations for compensation tonight. Now, we're not asking you to take action tonight. We're asking you to review the information, contemplate it, think about it, and then next Tuesday, we will have and ask for your formal action to adopt compensation. So I just want to be clear on that. So the first part of my presentation will deal with the agenda item that President Mena just mentioned. I'm going to go over our recommended compensation proposal. We'll also discuss the final proposed budgets for the general fund, the child nutrition program, the debt service. We'll review the current proposed tax rate, which will be adopted in August. And then we'll discuss the June 21st board meeting, the adoption of compensation and the budget. So with respect to compensation, what the administration is recommending is a 5% general pay increase applied to the market median salary of $58,080, inclusive of the step, for employees paid on the teacher or counselor salary scale. So the increases range from $2,910 for teachers on a 187-day calendar to $3,517 for teachers, nurses, librarians that work 226 days. So our starting pay would go up to $56,900. The master's would be $59,400, and the doctorate would be $60,090. So that's the recommended pay increase for teachers, nurses, librarians. For the counselor's pay scale, which is based on the master salary of teacher's master salary plus a $4 differential, the starting entry-level pay would be $60,148. So that would represent, a 5% increase would represent a $3,065 increase for those counselors working 197 days to $3,376 for those counselors working 217 days. With respect to all other pay families, the administration is recommending a 5% midpoint increase of respective pay scale for paraprofessionals, auxiliary, technology, the clinic, and the administrative employees. In addition to that, we are also recommending to increase the minimum starting pay for those impacted employees to $12 per hour. And then finally, what we are recommending is a $1,000 one-time ESSER retention payment to all eligible employees to be paid out in November, at the end of November. So the impact of this, or the cost of this proposal, is $16.4 million, and what you see is the impact based on those respective pay families. When you add the $1,000 lump sum payment, which is $1,000 for what we believe is 6,484 employees, you're looking at an impact of $6,480,000 out of ESSER funding, out of ESSER 2 ESSER funding. So the total cost of the package is $22,890,516. So that the increase for teachers working 197 days is $2,910, and our starting pay would be $56,900. So it's important to keep in mind that this is a very competitive proposal. I believe that's the highest since we did House Bill 3 when we implemented that, and that was a requirement. But this is part of our presentation. This is what we're going to recommend on Tuesday. So again, for your information, if you have time to think about it, on Tuesday we will present this and ask for action. Now this is this is the first part of the agenda, President Morales. If I can, I'll go to 4.B, which is the budget workshop.
Yes, you may.
Thank you, sir. So with respect to our budget, the adjustments that we made include increasing our revenue by $2 million for SHAR's revenue. We've also increased the salary accounts, again, for the recommended 5% increase for employees and the $12 minimum wage increase adjustment. We've also added about $1 million to the budget for utilities and gasoline budgets. We've added 7 police officering positions to the budget. And we also adjusted the stipend amount by $60,000 to reflect an approved increase in the CT stipend from $1,000 to $1,500. So this is the budget that we're going to recommend for the general fund. So what you're looking at is revenues of $461 million. Primary increases certainly are on local revenue. There's also a corresponding decrease in state revenue. Again, we have to keep in mind that as we get wealthier percentage-wise, we're projecting a 10.5% increase in property values for the district. And we will know for sure until August when we get our certified values in July, and then we calculate that amount with respect to the tax rate. That is higher than the projected increase in average daily attendance of what percent. So we're getting wealthier in the eyes of the state, and therefore there's a decrease in our state funding, so to speak. Now, our budget is $480,934,084. You'll see that $411 million of that is salaries and benefits. That's 85% of our budget, which is the norm. Ordinarily, most rule of thumb for school districts is about 85% for payroll and salaries. And we're also using $19,205,124 to balance the budget. That's what we're using in fund balance. Now that's 5%, so it's $19 million. So when you look at giving additional increases percentages in compensation, that has a negative impact in how much budget we have to use, how much fund balance we have to use to balance this budget. We need to keep that in mind. When you look at the tax rates for other school districts, our maintenance and operation tax rate is about could be 10 cents to 15 cents lower from some of our peers. So maybe other school districts might be able to afford higher raises, but their tax rate is a lot higher than ours. And that's the fact. So we need to keep that in mind with respect to compensation and the impact on the budget of whatever is recommended and approved next week. With respect to the child nutrition budget, we have revenues of $34,374,000, and we have a budget of $34,903,148. So use of fund balance of $528,462. Primary increases certainly are in our federal revenues. Again, we're projecting more participation, a little bit increase in our ADA, so we're projecting in revenues an increase of about $783,000. Finally, we have the debt service budget. That's $64,276,000 in revenues and $64,276 in expenditures. So let's talk about the tax rate, so to speak. With respect to the tax rate, it's broken up into 2 sections. We have maintenance and operations, and we have the debt service. Maintenance and operations goes towards day-to-day operations, primarily for salaries, benefits, supplies, and equipment. The legal limit is 17 cents above the maximum compressed tax rate. And we won't know what that tax rate will be until early August. We get our certified values in late July. We then submit that information to TA, and they'll confirm and say, this is your maximum compressed tax rate. Now, for Socorro ISD, we can certainly go up 5 pennies from there to be able to, 5 golden pennies to be able to generate Tier 2 funding. Anything above that requires an election. We can certainly approve it, but the election can only take place in November. Now, with respect to the interest and sinking fund, the legal limit is 50 cents. We're at 40. That's used to pay off voter-approved bonded indebtedness. And the tax rate must be sufficient to meet the yearly bond payments. So let's look at the proposed tax rate. It's important to know that this district is recommending a tax rate decrease of about 2.3 cents. Now, again, we won't know the final tax rate until August, but we usually are pretty conservative to make sure that we don't publish a tax rate in June that usually is higher than what we approve in August. And that's lower than what's approved in August. My apologies. So this is what we're looking at. Our current tax rate is $1.275454. What we're recommending is a tax rate of $1.251884. Again, primarily in the maintenance and operations tax rate. So we're looking at about a 2-cent tax rate decrease there. So that's the tax rate that we published. Now, what's the impact? So when you look at the average taxable value, you'll see that last year's was $135,801. This year, it's $146,068. Now, these are preliminary values. We'll get our certified values again in July, and that number will probably drop a little bit. Not much, but a little bit. But it's important for the public to remember this. This board has no control over the average taxable value of a home in this district. That's a function of the market that is determined by the Central Appraisal District. So you have no control over that, and the public needs to remember that. What you have control over is the tax rate. And right now, what we're proposing is a 2.3 cent tax rate decrease. But because of the increase in the values, you're looking at a property tax levy increase of about $96.53 for the average homeowner in Socorro ISD. Now, usually the values, this impact goes down a little bit in August, but that's what we have to publish at this current rate. And the tax rate that we can't exceed without having an election is $1.251884. So that's what they currently have at this time. Now, we've published the notice that says that we're going to have a public hearing on June the 21st to discuss the budget and the proposed tax rate, and allows the public to provide you with feedback on both of those items. We published it in the El Paso Times and the West Texas Courier. Historically, we've always done that for the June board meeting. The regular board meeting will be conducted, we'll have the public hearing, after which we'll adopt compensation, and then we'll adopt the budget. Ordinarily, when we adopt the budget, compensation has been done before that. However, because of the TASB study, we're going to have to do this next week. So also in the regular board meeting in August, we'll conduct a public hearing for proposed tax rate, followed by the adoption of the tax rate at that time. So that's where we have. You did get a copy of the proposed budgets in detail. If there's any question, or if you want to call me later during the week with any questions that you have on the budget, or on Tuesday when we're asking you to adopt it, if you still have questions, by all means, feel free. So that's the presentation that we have. Is there any questions?
Yes, Mr. Nahara, go ahead.
Mr. Dessa, the last time I was involved in the budgeting process back in 2019, I know it was mandated that we raise the cost of full-price meals and child nutrition services. And I remember, even at that point, I think that we were a little behind, but there was also a maximum that we could raise them as well, if I'm remembering this correctly. Have we resolved all of that, or is there a chance that the cost of full-price meals will go up this year as well?
I'm not perceiving any of that, but I'll let Ms. Shelley answer that question.
Good evening, everybody. We will not have to raise prices because we have a positive fund balance. Okay. So for this coming year, we will not have to raise prices. Now, if we ever get in a situation, knock on wood we don't, where we have a negative fund balance, then we will be required.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
No more questions.
Any other questions?
Something that I was, I guess, happy to see was that we're expanding our police department, right? We're growing it to 7 more additional officers to ensure that there's a 1-to-1 ratio. And I'm thinking probably because of our high schools are so big that maybe I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Carmen, maybe the intention is to have 2 officers there because of how big those campuses are?
Yes, sir. When we started looking at our 58 FTEs on the roster, placing 1 officer on each of our 50 campuses, still leaving the command structure in place with 8 officers. There was only 57 in the budget, so one of those 7 is to make that whole. And then, yes, sir, the other 6 are so that we would be able to have 2 officers at every one of our very large high school campuses. That is the intent.
No, that's it. Just thank you for the clarification. Just good news.
Mr. Mena, I have a
Yes,
question.
go ahead.
Mr. Dessa, in regards to the one-time compensation plan, $1,000, how much money do we have exactly on the ESSER funds? Because this money will come out of the ESSER funds, it won't come out of the general fund, correct?
Yes, sir. This would come out of ESSER 2 funding.
How
And
much do we
so,
have right now on the ESSER two funding?
so I believe with respect to ESSER two funding, we received about $44 million, and we've spent some. I'd have to check that information, sir. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but I can certainly provide it in the Friday packet.
Please. And then on page 8, on the third item, the administrative, I know I spoke to you today and we were talking about that. Can you also put on a Friday package, how much of that $2 million is administrative?
When you say administrative, can you be more specific?
Because you have speech therapists and diagnosticians, so
So back
when you
those
say
out?
administrative, are you talking principals, district administrators?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to see what the dollar amount is on district administrators.
Will do.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Barrera.
Where do our sped clerks fall under? Are they under the paraprofessional?
I believe they are. Well, some I believe are in the paraprofessional. I think they all are in the paraprofessional, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Were the sped clerks, because I see them, the amount of work that they help with the diags, with their ARDs and stuff like that, so is there an increase there for them as well? Because I looked at their qualifications, and their qualifications are actually, they require a lot on their part, so I just want to make sure that they're getting their due part in this.
Well, yes, sir. I mean, they're getting the 5%. I'll certainly turn to Ms. Stiles.
Good evening, President Mena, Dr. Carmen, members of the board. The special ed clerks are going to receive the 5% increase.
Nothing else, just the 5%.
No, we did get information back from TASB, and they are placed according to market value.
Does that mean they don't get the $1,000 bonus either?
No, they get that. They
Okay.
qualify for that. That's correct.
Okay. Sorry, I wasn't clear.
One last question.
Go ahead.
Mr. Essa, on last week regarding the TASB study, if I understood it correctly, when I looked at the TASB study, it doesn't really move anybody in the pay scale. It just raises the minimum wage for what the minimum wage is right now from 7-something to $12. But it did not move anybody else on the pay scale with TASB study, correct?
I think some employees were reclassified. I think you're looking at the auto mechanics that were reclassified. I think there may be some other positions that are being reclassified into higher pay scales. If they're below the minimum, they get an equity adjustment and move them up to the minimum, so to speak, sir. So I think some of them were. I mean, we can certainly provide that information if we have to. And then we'll go from there.
One last, go ahead.
Referring to page 7, you've got a proposed compensation plan. All eligible pay families having to do with the one-time $1,000 ESSER retention payment to all eligible employees. Question to you is, what percent are we required to, let's say, use in order to pay employees or compensate employees? I know you're using $1,000 from the ESSER fund. Is there a guideline that you have to go through?
No, sir. I'm not aware of any guideline or percentage that we have to use with respect to either ESSER funding. I mean, if that's what you're asking.
Well, you're saying you have $40 million in the ESSER, $44 million in the ESSER fund.
That's what was awarded originally
Okay.
last year.
So there's no guideline as to what percentage we have to have? I mean, what's to say we can't give employees, whatever, let's say $5,000? I'm trying to make it to where there's got to be some type of reason why you permitted or you're recommending $1,000.
Because we have certainly other activities, other initiatives that we have within ESSER 2 that we're funding. I mean, we're talking about certainly.
Are you going to discuss that in the budget next?
We can certainly put that in the Friday
I sure
packet.
like to see that. I'd like to see the breakdown to make sure that we're following what we need to do.
Yes, sir. We can go ahead and give you the breakdown of what's allocated for it and what's remaining and how we're projecting to use maybe that $1,000 for the ESSER 2
That'd be
fund.
very helpful. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Mr. Barrera?
When I was looking at the sped clerks, and I looked at other positions, and again, going back to qualifications, some of those qualifications just required a high school diploma, yet they were getting paid $2-3 more than a sped clerk. And a sped clerk, if I'm not mistaken, had to either have an associate's degree or a 48 credit hours of college. So they have more, and bilingual as well. So there's more qualification for them, but they're getting underpaid. So help me understand that, why that was. I don't know, maybe it was just missed, but I just want to make sure that they're getting their due share in this and that they're not getting underpaid, because I have personally seen the work that they put into it.
Well, certainly the TASB study is looking at peered school districts and seeing what they're paying for this particular category of position. So I'm not exactly sure if they look at the job requirements, but I mean the minimum qualifications, but they're looking to see what other districts are paying them, and those minimum qualifications could be different. They can vary. But the actual pay for that particular position or something similar to it is what they're looking at to see whether it's within market. And if they didn't reclassify it, it's probably within 10% of what other school districts are paying them. But we are paying very well when you look at the compensation, at the history compared to the other school districts. Now, some categories might vary, but I don't believe I saw anything there that said that the spec clerk was 10% under market and so forth. I thought they were pretty much online. Do you remember?
So what you're saying is that the difference in variance is just the qualification. So the title may be the same in a different district or in a different part of the state, but the qualifications or requirements, their job duties are probably less in another district, but ours are more. So I think we're putting a little bit more burden on them.
I mean, that's.
I just want to make sure that we look into it.
That's it. Okay. So
Mr. Barrera, if I may, I think we could look at those comparison districts that we got the numbers from, because that's what the TASB study did, was look at the pay, and I think that's what Ms. Aressa is explaining. But maybe HR department could take the next couple of days and look at the requirements for those comparative districts. So if we require more of our special ed clerks, even though we're paying market value, if we're requiring more qualifications, then we could bring that to the board for consideration. Would that be kind of what you're asking for?
Yes, Dr. Carmen, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Another question.
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Dessa, so just for clarification, on page 14, the projected voter approval tax rate is 1.25. That would include already the 5 cents that would be allowed without voter approval, right?
That's correct.
We are not allowed to go any higher than 1.25 ... without additional voter approval.
That's correct, sir. And that's what we're estimating right now. We know we will give you the definite amount, that definite tax rate approval rate in August.
Okay.
But it does include the 5 cents, sir.
Sounds good, and I understand, having had to do government budgets for the county before, that's because the certified rolls don't come out until then, correct?
That's correct.
All right.
Mr. Reza, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
So I understand that we're going to decrease the proposed tax change from to 2357, but what concerns me is that the homestead function is going to also it's going from 25 to 40,000, and that is less money for us. It's a concern. Are we going to be okay there?
I think there are in some instances that the state might look at certain school districts and try to hold them harmless, especially maybe on the INS side. But the bottom line is that the state is looking to ensure to provide property tax relief because of these increases. We're hoping that the legislature would do something about providing additional funding, either increasing the basic allotment the next legislative session. I think it's a given they're going to look at providing funding for security of the school district, of the schools. We're hopeful that perhaps they will be able to do something about providing additional funding through increasing the basic allotment or maybe some of the special populations. And I think there's some aspects of it where they can maybe provide hold us harmless. But it's not something that I foresee right now.
But it's not 100%, so we don't really know if that's going to happen, right?
Not at this point, no, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
One more
Yes.
question.
Go ahead.
Mr. Dessa, I see that we're increasing the number of police officers by 7, but considering that we terminated that MOU that provided free training, and hopefully we'll see that again and reconsider, but has there been any additional allotment to compensate for that training for those police officers? Because now we're gonna have to foot that bill. And we also need to coordinate with the other police departments because like any good team, pick it, football, baseball, basketball, softball, even this team right here, right? You have to work together frequently so that when the team does come together, everybody knows what their role is and everybody knows what they need to do. So there has to be some coordination. Whether we do that through an MOU or something else, we're gonna have to figure that out. But did we allow for additional funding to compensate for the training that our officers will no longer get?
Right now, the budget is what was approved back when we reviewed it around March or February of this year. But keep in mind, Mr. Nakada, that the budget is a dynamic document. It could be amended. It's amended every single month. So if it's the board's desire, we can always review and amend the budget if that's the desire.
Okay.
And I can speak directly to that, Mr. Nahara, also. The 3 SISD police officers that were taking part in that training with the City of Socorro Police Department, we've not asked to add any funding back in there for additional training at this point. But the active shooter training that we do with all of the area police departments, there is no charge from those cities for that. So it is provided. We do have ongoing active shooter training with all of the area police departments. But at this point, no, sir. To replace the training that those 3 officers received, we have not asked to add any budget in yet.
Right, and Dr. Carmen, if I remember correctly, it wasn't 3 police officers. Maybe we were setting 3 police officers, but it was 3 days, I believe, according to the MOU. And it's also my understanding that we're cycling the police officers through. So really, it impacted the entire police department. And the active shooter training is something that we've been doing. It's been ongoing. So, I understand exactly what you're saying, but when all is considered, unfortunately, it's still a reduction in training.
I believe it was 8 hours per month, and I think we had 3 identified officers, if I remember. I can verify that, Mr. Nahara, but I believe that's what we had at the end of that MOU.
I'd like to add something to that. So the training that they're receiving it might incorporate active shooter training, but they were actually more geared towards high-risk warrants, something that, I don't know, I mean, we already voted on it, but it seems like that's not our role. Our role is to protect our campuses, to protect our kids, and to protect our teachers. That's our position. That's what we need to do to ensure exactly that. Now, if you guys want more training, like Mr. Castellano and I had mentioned, I'm pretty sure he can reach out to his former agency as well. If you guys want me to, I can reach out to the federal agency, and those guys are tier 1. So this special response team was a tier 3, and if you guys want more training, you guys want better qualified training from a tier 1 operators, I'm pretty sure we can arrange that, if that's a concern that you have.
I don't think it should take a cancellation of an MOU if you're saying that's a resource. We should have done that already. Absolutely.
That MOU from the city was actually a grant, so it was just a matter of time that was going to run out.
Right.
So,
and to be clear, my question wasn't necessarily about the MOU. It's about what I see as a reduction in available training to our police officers, and how are we going to compensate for that?
We're getting off track here. It has to be in the budget for us to discuss this item. So,
right, Mr. Menon, my question was, did we allow additional budgeting for the reduction in training? That was my question. So I believe my question was.
Yes, no, that's fine, but I think we're getting a little off track here a little bit. That's all I'm saying. Okay, thank you though. Any other questions? We're good? Okay, thank you, Mr.
We'll get you
Reza.
that information for the Friday packet, sir. I'm sorry. We'll get you that information for the Friday packet.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Reza.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions at this time, I will adjourn the meeting. The time is 6:09.